Spirit of the Lord. Come on, clap your hands, all these people. Tell it to God with a voice of triumph. Take me up. Hey. Come on, the power of the Lord is here. Feel it in the atmosphere. Oh.
Good morning. What you see on the screen there, well, the first thing you saw was Joe Biden in an Atlanta church. And the second thing you saw here, after the first stream I did about the Rick Ross, Kendrick Lamar thing, it got me thinking more and more about the music business. And I've been reading about this for years. And I remember reading an article about the effects of streaming and the effects of AI on the music industry. And so I was reading something and it talked about the effects of streaming and chat AI and all that coming into effect into the music industry. So in some of my reading, it made me go and create a rap song. And you can see here, I told ChatGPT I wanted a rap song about bitches and smoking blunts and guns. And it wrote me a song here, even a chorus. Yo, it's a story about the streets where the concrete meets the heat, where bitches smoke blunts, guns under the seat. Every corner got a tale, every night it gets real. Survivors of the fittest, gotta hustle for a meal. Bitches smoking blunts, guns cocked, ready to ride, living fast, no regrets on this wild side. From the highs to the lows, the struggle never ends. In this concrete jungle, where only the strong transcend. That's a pretty damn good song by a robot. I would argue that it won't be long before the music industry sees this and they'll come up with like pseudo characters, pseudo rappers. They won't even need these guys to come and rap and give them record deals, things like that, because AI will clearly be able to do it for them. You see it here in this article, in this tab here. A rap song, pretty damn good rap song. I don't have to pay any writers, no attribution to anyone. Maybe I edited a little bit of the music business people will have someone come and edit this and make it more commercially palatable. And someone says, remember to zoom in. That's right. That's right. Let me let you zoom into my rap lyrics. Don't you steal these. I might copyright these for my own for my own use one day. Something ever happened to me that they'll say he was aspiring to be a rapper. But anyway, so you can see the lyrics here. It even wrote me a chorus. Imagine that. Right? There's a chorus. I read it for you. And we have the second verse, another chorus, the bridge, verse 3. I bet you most rappers don't even know what a bridge is. Seriously. Most rappers don't know what a bridge is. Most rappers, Gary said, this song is ass. Hey, man, all I need is a beat. You don't even have to understand what the hell half these rappers are saying. All you need is a beat. Anyway, I don't think it's that bad. It probably compares to what you hear out here on the streets these days. Particularly if you put a good beat on it, we might have a hit here. Where bitches smoke blunts and guns keep the demons at bay. I could hear a rapper saying that. Yeah. Someone said Lil Jug. Yeah, be Big Jug. Old Jug. I just started off with a little levity here. At some point, John, you can use suno.com. I can have it put a voice on it. That would be very interesting. Today was going to be an interesting show, we're going to have Master Kim join at some point. Let me put the link in the panel. And I put a comment in the chat earlier. You guys should really get out your pen and paper. If you have questions, this is the time to ask Master Kim. In situations like this, many people want to charge you for the information that Master Kim readily gives out for free. So I think we all should take advantage of that. And whenever he joins, we take advantage of his willingness to get up here and just give us free advice. Let me take a look at a couple things I wanted to show you, though, while we're waiting on Master Kim. So I want to show you the Chat GPT. And I'm going to do another stream on this music industry. As I told you, one of the things that I've noticed while I read this over the years, a few years back, was I was reading some music publication. Don't ask me why. And one of the music executives talked about how they really only need singles now. They don't need albums. And they talked about how people don't listen to albums anymore. We have Master Kim up here now, so I'm going to bring up Master Kim. But before I do, I just want to put a seed in your head. Most people don't listen to albums anymore. If you go to YouTube or Spotify, you may turn on one song and let the algorithm play the songs for you, select the song for you, and you can skip the song. And there's another thing in the music business that you probably never heard of. It's called skip rate. And it has really changed the way that music is being made. And we're going to talk all about that on the stream. We'll talk about that after the Master Kim. It's kind of interesting to me. So let's get Master Kim up here. We're just going to let him kind of have a free flow. I'll ask him some questions here, but I really want to just let him talk about business, and I think it'll be very valuable for people here interested in business or just kind of curious to how things work. So let's bring up Master Kim here. Master Kim.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Ever since ever since I saw you on CT's show, just listening to some of the things you said just fascinated me. And oftentimes, people will charge you for this type of advice, and you're readily giving it out for free. Things like the bodegas that you talked about, most people don't even know how profitable a bodega is. And you came out and you gave us the numbers, the lottery tickets, cigarettes, all the things that they're selling, just inside baseball type information. And for the people that are interested in business and oftentimes don't have anyone to talk to like you, give us a brief synopsis of your background. Many people already know who you are. And then I'll just let you talk about whatever you want to talk about, Master Kim, and I'll have some questions for you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and thank you very much, John, for setting time aside. And just I did want to start the comment real quick, but just kind of communicating that obviously I don't have it all figured out. I'm just sharing kind of my experiences that I've had, but I've also had the opportunity to witness people that are wildly successful, and I aspire to have done what they've done. So I've seen businesses ran kind of like the knucklehead way, the small immigrant farmer type of way. Is I just use that as an analogy. But then some people that are doing it successfully. So please don't interpret this as I'm coming at it from personal experience of just balling it out, as much as there are windows of that, but most certainly windows of complete, absolute loser failure. So with that being said, yeah. So my brother and I and my mother, I was born here in the United States. My mother is a Korean immigrant from Seoul, which is in South Korea. My father was a U.S. Army medic, brought my mother here to the States. And this was back when the riots had just ended in the Detroit, Michigan market. So late 60s, early 70s. My father was already
Hey, Master Kim,
married.
which
Yes.
riots are these that you're referring to?
So this would be the Detroit riots of '69.
Okay.
Chicago, Detroit. They
So
all
this
just
is Martin Luther King.
Yeah, Martin Luther King.
Okay.
I guess whatever riots had kicked off, and I don't mean to diminish such a very important historical time frame, but the riots that scared all the white people to move to the suburbs.
Okay.
From Chicago, which did rebound, of course, but most certainly in Detroit. So what happened is after the riots, these downtown areas, you name it, whether it be Cleveland, Detroit, certain parts of New York, they became desolate because the white population, called the white flight, is we've heard that term used before. So when the whites had fled the urban areas, um, the Arabic and maybe some of the small hat business owners, they fled too. These, there was a big void in the market of who were going to run these bakeries and nail salons and retail stores or whatnot. And that's where a lot of the other cultures kind of stepped in. One being the Koreans. The Koreans stepped in quite handsomely because the Michigan market had the big three: GM, Chrysler, and Ford. They all have stamping plants and GM factories back in the 70s and 80s or whatnot. So when the Arabs in the Michigan market and the Koreans kind of stepped in, we fulfilled that void, whether it be the liquor store, the grocery stores, the beauty supplies, and whatnot, which were formerly owned and ran by other cultures, mainly maybe whites and some other cultures or whatnot. They kind of stepped up the food chain and no longer wanted to do, small retail anymore. And that's where we stepped in. And living it. But what a lot of immigrants don't realize is that you could live poor and save money, but you don't have to live in the hood. We, on the other hand, did live in the hood. There's an area in downtown Detroit called the Cass Corridor. I lived at 665 West Willis, which is near Selden in the Cass Corridor area, which is notorious for being that's where the dope flop house is and all that, just it was just a very bad area, but the rents were dirt cheap. So, just like anyone growing up in the hood, the crime, prostitution, cockroaches, alcoholism, all that stuff was just rampant. And it's odd when you see like a Hindu family or a Korean family living in the middle of this craziness. It's kind of puzzling. Like, why would they be here? It's because, for one, they're just wanting to save money. Yep, that's the apartment building right there, 665 West Willis. And as you look at that front door, the manager to the building lived at the right apartment, and you had to buzz yourself in. And I lived on the left side of the building, the middle floor, right there. And people that know those type of buildings, we did not have our own bathroom. It was a shared bathroom on the floor.
With other
Um,
families.
yes, with other tenants.
Wow.
And that building was, uh, you know, 20% white, 80% black. But then, we're Korean and there was like an Indian family up top. But, people didn't stay there long.
Mm.
I was there till preschool, till third grade. Um, and we'd walk everywhere. But this would be the area that they would steal cars and dump them in that neighborhood. And as
Mm.
kids, we'd play with these abandoned cars, not knowing how dangerous these chemical, we'd see like pink chemicals and antifreeze in the reservoir, underneath the engine, or in the engine compartment. Kids would play with all this stuff because it
Yeah.
was abandoned. We didn't realize that the car could fall off the cinder blocks and crush our legs, and just kids being kids, right?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so my mother owned a wig shop in Griswold, in Detroit, right in downtown Detroit. And the wig shop, so back in the day, there wasn't really a beauty supplies stores. There were all wig shops where you would get your beauty supplies, your relaxer. Back then, extensions were limited. They weren't the business that they are today. So in Griswold in Detroit, next to the Quickie Donuts, my mother owned a store, and that's where my mother would bring me to work, and we'd have armed robberies on the spot.
Really?
And yeah, it was, and the most dangerous part of a store owner is when you leave and when you enter the store, open it up for the day,
Hmm.
and just people caught us as we're opening up, or they would just walk in and, fake the funk, look at wigs and shit, and in reality, pull out a pistol and commit an armed robbery on the spot. It was stunning, and I would just sit there where the customers sit and just be too so polarized and frightened that I wouldn't do any. I would do nothing. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything.
Wow.
I was just so stunned while the robbery was taking place. Yes,
Wow. Wow.
I I
How
I,
many?
I, I,
Go,
I
go
felt
ahead.
like I had power.
How many times do you think y'all endured that?
Well, the ones that I saw were 2 times, but my mother's been robbed probably a total of 5 times.
Damn. And
And
you've told me about some of those. We may get to that, but keep going, Master Kim.
so at the wig shop, it was a total of 5 times, and it's so stunning and polarizing that you don't have time to think or say. I mean, to this day, it haunts me. Not that my mom got robbed, but it haunts me that I was 5 years old, but I was just a coward. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't say, "Hey, please," because during the course of the robbery, they're slamming people to the ground, twisting their arm behind them because they want them to come up with maximum money. So it
Mm,
isn't just holding a pistol and say, "Give me the money in the register." It's they're grabbing my mother and slamming her to the ground. My mother's showing her the money, but they think that there's more. And the only way to push those buttons is force. I mean, that's a fact.
mm.
And majority of the time, there was no more money to taking the purse and stuff. But to this day, I feel so bad, not from my mother getting beasted on, but I was such a coward. I didn't say anything. In fact, one of the robberies, the robbers looked at me because I was sitting in, where the customers were sitting to wait, like at a hair salon, like the lounge area. I was sitting
Mm.
in the seats, and I was the only Asian kid there. And the guys robbing the store said, "Hey, is this your mother?" And I shook my head, no. I was so petrified, and to this day, it haunts me that I did that. I think that's very unusual for a kid to do that. I think normal kid would say, "Hey, don't hurt my mom, please." Maybe acknowledging the kid, they would have some empathy for her. But when they asked me, I said no, and they knew I was lying. I was so just shocked. It was 3 people and 2 women, and they were taking turns whooping my mom's ass to come up with more money, and there was just nothing more for them to give. And customers were coming in and out of the store and didn't pay no mind. Is the weird thing. It was like seeing like a stray dog walk around. You could pay attention to it, but at the end of the day, that stray dog's got nothing to do with you. Um, so uh, so a lot of store owners have bouts of owning stores, getting rid of stores, owning stores, being partners in stores. They never, it's almost like prostitution. Hookers never actually quit, or, maybe they
Mm.
finesse their game. And maybe that's a bad analogy to use.
No, I know what you
Um,
mean.
yeah. So my mother, a waitress, in between the bouts of owning, failed beauty supply stores, failed because of just labor, robberies, break-ins, and waitressing. Because as a Oriental lady, you could. Oh, and my father was not in our life at all. So in between, Asians always can waitress. You can always work at a Chinese restaurant, and whatnot. So growing up in the Cass Corridor with a mother that was basically a waitress, she worked her way up the food chain and became kind of a manager. And when you live in Detroit, people aspire to move to a city called Southfield. Southfield is just like an Eminem movie. Once you cross 8 Mile, it's a different world, and that's where the small hats, all the nice businesses, the homes. Because in Detroit, that's where you aspire to, is get above 8 Mile. And my mother became a restaurant manager for a restaurant in Southfield, and then things changed. So then we moved to a different part of Detroit, an all black area part of Detroit, but it was better than being in the Cass Corridor. And my brother and I knew that we were not black, but we didn't understand why we lived in an all black area, but it was just to save money. And it was very effective. Um,
Let me
in,
ask you
in,
this
in
question,
whatnot.
Master Kim. When you see people paying exorbitant rents when there are cheaper rents in these black areas still today, and you see how your family sacrificed and lived in those areas and saved money, and what do you think about that?
That's a very good question, and I will say this, that I think things are different now because of the internet, and people are hooking up their cribs more. And
Mm,
it's and then, just like you mentioned on a previous podcast, that even the property values are going up in the hood too. People would escape the hood to go to the better schools, but both values are being raised on both ends, on the
mm,
hood side and at the suburb side. So just like as you mentioned, you're cutting your tenants a deal because the property values are gone up, but you're not going to your tenants and hitting them up. You're trying to maintain. So I would say that the minute we moved from the hood to all white area my freshman year, it was like winning the lottery ticket. There's some weird stuff that only exists in the hood. For example, back in the day, so I saw a video the other day of someone being a fake DoorDash driver, holding a fake
Mm.
bag of food, just
Yeah.
knocking on doors just so he could case up. Well, before the internet back in the day, they used to use the yellow pages. Remember the yellow pages?
Yeah. Yeah. I
They
remember.
would knock door to door, um, uh, you know, uh, fake, trying to act like they're handing out the yellow pages to see who's home, who's not, and who's not home. They would break in. I don't want to use the word breaking in and a home invasion is all in the same. It didn't matter, they would prefer you're not home. I remember I was home by myself and someone broke in doing the yellow page thing. I hid in the closet, you know. I hid in the closet, scared as all heck. But because you're poor, when people bust in your apartment, they don't know you're poor until they come in. Because
Mm.
there are a lot of middle class black people that live in the hood that got color TV sets, Jordans, everything. But you don't know this stuff till you bust into, because in the in the hood, people are guarded. They don't let you in their houses, right?
Hmm.
So, well, at least from what I remember. So you
Yeah.
don't
You're
know
right.
what people
No, you're right.
have.
Yeah.
So people don't realize what people have or don't have until they break in. When they broke in, they realized we didn't have shit, because Asians also just don't buy a lot of luxury goods anyways. It just they want to save money, so they don't buy shit. So there was nothing for these people to take. I don't even think they came into our room because they could see a mattress on the floor. That already says, mattress on the floor signifies these people ain't got shit.
Hmm.
We didn't have a couch set. We had a black and white TV sitting on a milk crate, all that. And I'm not trying to overdo it or underdo it. That was my mother's choice. She didn't want to spend money on material things. She wanted to save money to get us out of where we were. You
Now,
know,
let me ask you this
um,
question: How did she come up with the money to open up, say, the first business that she opened?
Yep. So Koreans have something called a gay, which sounds like, gay, but it's GAI.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is, it's a group of 12 people. They come together and in every culture has a different name for it, but they
Mm-hmm.
all kind of put money in a hat, right? And let's say the group is going to come up with 80 G's, or let's say 50 G's, just for simple math, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once a month, every member of the group would show up with 2,000. We'd all meet at a Korean restaurant or a
Mm-hmm.
restaurant, and whoever in out of the 12 months, once a month, that person gets the bag or the hat, right? The
Mm-hmm.
proverbial bag or hat, right? So
Mm-hmm.
everyone shows up to the restaurant. I show up with my 2 G's. John shows up with his 2 G's. We give $2,000, and it all goes to that one person that might have the month of January. Okay.
Hey,
And that
go
person,
ahead.
yes,
No, go ahead.
and that person needs money today because maybe they have to hire an immigration lawyer. Maybe they're trying to buy a new dry cleaners, and the dry cleaners equipment, some of the chemicals and equipment you can no longer use
Mm-hmm.
from back in the day. Or you have a restaurant and you're so off the hook, you now have to expand your walk, which means another 10-foot hood unit and blowers. Well, shit, that's another 6 G's right there. Not
Mm-hmm.
to mention the architectural plans. So to add 10 more feet of walk might cost you 40 grand easy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so so you can barter, hey, I want to be January, or hey, I'll trade you my February for November or whatever. So we all kind of barter, or I might vouch for someone that I bring to the group. This
Mm-hmm.
is, Mr. Song from New Jersey, because he's a different Korean from a different market. No one knows him, so I'd have to vouch for him. And if he doesn't pay back the group and he runs away, right? Because I know that the guy's involved in saunas, these Korean saunas, or he's involved in prostitution, which is horrible thing. Then Koreans frown on that, by the way, and we'll hopefully talk about that in a little bit. I'll vouch for him, so he gets into the group. So we all kind of barter and trade, but this is also done almost before the group kind of comes together, so that, and I know that if I don't need the money, I'm going to choose to be in November and December, because I'm going to get the 50,000 plus all the interest for every month, right? So I'm going to walk away with 58,000 or 60,000 if I can just hold off till December. So we'll all put our money in the group and give it to one person. That person will then go open up their dry cleaners, or have their down payment for the franchise fee for a 7-Eleven or something like that. Or whatever. So
Hey,
when
Mr.
you
Kim,
do, yes.
hold on for a second. Let's lean into this for a second. Are you familiar with a susu?
Yeah, yeah. So other cultures call it a different
Right.
name. I think that this
Hmm.
is like maybe Somalis or African Americans. I've heard of something similar.
West Africans and the Caribbeans call it a susu.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So same concept, but this is a very dynamic concept because
Hmm.
it provides immediate liquidity to those that
Hmm.
are invisible. You come to this country, you don't have a FICO score, you don't have any cash flow that a bank would even mess with you. So these are dynamically powerful, and people don't understand. But it's 100% trust. There,
Hmm.
there's no
Yep.
there's
Yep.
zero paperwork. There's zero anything.
Hmm.
It's 100% trust. But
Hmm.
not only that, these guys are also doing it to save, to build themselves up for something far more bigger and more important. Because let's say they get involved in a $25,000 susu. This is chump change. They want a $200,000 one, that, but they've got to build up to that
Right.
and just
Right.
be part of this business community
Right.
for over, let's say, 5 to 10 years.
Let me
So
ask you.
so
Let me give you some feedback. Someone in the comments, get cracked for me, to me, says this is what blacks should be learning. I want to respond to that, and I'll let you go. Master Kim, have you ever heard black people say, or are you familiar with the thought that don't do business with friends and family
yes.
in the
So
black
so
community?
you right, you hear that, but then you also hear the opposite of that. Well, where the hell else are you going to get interest free 10 grand? Or who else would you trust? I mean, you've known the kids since you were born, right? So it's a double. I mean, all the other communities do business with family, but there's a high trust. No one's going to gank the bag and run away in these high trust communities. So get cracked for me is 100%. And the funny thing about this is again, get cracked for me. And again, I'm not caping for him, as I think is the word. Everyone wants to get to where John and get crack are at, right? That you're using your brain. Yes, I know John can pick up a hammer and know how to climb up on a roof and tear up, maybe some shingles until the Mexicans show up. But you're a high intellect, have a high degree. We pray to step into yours and get crack shoes. But the beauty about get crack, he knows the difference from the people fresh off the boat to the people that have moved up the food chain, that now are just buying the properties and leasing them out to the people fresh off the boat. So that's the beauty about get crack for me. He knows
Master
all
Kim,
the various
let me
levels.
dig it. Let me ask you another question. You mentioned trust, and I don't know if you read the definition beforehand, but trust is probably the most critical element to a susu or to a gay. Would you say that's fair?
100%. Yes.
So now I remember this story that you told me, and I'm going to let you tell it again about the black man that wanted to open up the business if we get time. But would you say that a mindset where you can't or where you don't want to do business with friends and family pretty much puts you behind the eight ball?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
And you asked the question earlier. You said, "Well, where does this take you?" If you something along the lines of, "You have to do business with strangers if you're not going to do business with friends and family." Correct?
Correct.
And I think what has happened with the blacks, and maybe even many Americans, but definitely with the blacks, because it is deeply ingrained in their mind that they shouldn't do business with friends and family. So I think they turn to the government as their friends and family that they never knew, and so hence the heavy reliance on banks um, and the government to force the banks to loan them money. But it seems that the immigrants using the gay or the susu are able to come up with fairly cheap capital, which really helps you to start a business. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, yes, absolutely. But there, but the money is one aspect of it. There's another aspect of it. Okay, and I want to articulate this the right way. In fact, I'm gonna use get crack for me, and you, John, is my proxy example. Okay, so since get crack isn't on the panel, but I'm going to use him because maybe in the viewer's mind, it's going to make more sense Asian to Asian. So with Get Crack for me, he will never, ever see me financially weak. All the war stories, all the goofy stories, he'll never hear from me, right? I will always be strong. And if I'm ever part of his the GAY lending group, I'm always going to pay on time. I'm going to insist on paying for dinner. I'm going to do some Jedi tricks that might last 10 years because one day, I hope it never happens, but one day I'm going to call Get Cracked and say, fly into Atlanta Airport. There's a 3-acre parcel for sale, and it's a quarter mile from the Atlanta Airport. Everyone knows that that's excellent real estate, right? But because I've been financially solid, Get Cracked for me, he's never saw a weak Master Kim. He's never saw it, although there is. He's never heard of me being drunk. He's never heard me beating my wife. He's never heard me catching any cases. He's never heard me getting parking tickets. Get Cracked for me has nothing but the absolute best to think of me. Although I'm human and I am Christian and we all fall short, it's almost this Jedi trick that I show the best face possible to Get Cracked for me so he does not have to do a lot of thinking, right? He might say, okay, Mike, I'm going to send my cousin out who knows commercial real estate better than I do, meet him at the airport, take him around, blah, 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 blah. So the reason I use the Get Cracked for me is that the end game, I am no angel, right? We all are got the devil in us, but I purposely treated Get Cracked for me like a king, and he shows nothing but the good side of me for my own self benefit, which is projecting down the road 10 years, right? So Get Cracked for me is one example. I'm going to treat you the same way. I'm going to treat all these Asians the same way. So I'm treating everyone this way that they never see me financially weak because I may do business with Mr. Go. So the reason I say that is loaning money to each other and be part of these lending susu groups is one part, but the other 50% is the finessing of and building that relationship, and that is very important. So for example, there's this Korean lady named Mrs. O, which is OH, okay? My mother always would twinkle her eye and say, I'm meeting with Mrs. O today. I'm meeting with Mrs. O today. She has this big Japanese steakhouse in Troy, Michigan. Beautiful lady. She was our benchmark that we wanted to always be in the good graces of Mrs. O, because one day my mother herself wanted to open up a high-end Japanese steakhouse. That never happened. But so the point I'm trying to mention is being part of these lending relationships is one thing, but also finessing these relationships. And when I say finesse, it's taken in the wrong way, like playing someone or not being genuine. But with a lot of Asians that come from poor countries, it is about the money, unfortunately. And these relationships are matured, and there's a very good chance, a 70% chance I will never, ever, ever borrow money or ask Get Cracked for me to become a partner, which is a high probability. It's, whereas Americans would right out the gate work for Get Cracked for me and on day one ask for a cash advance on their payroll, right?
I've seen that.
Why don't you be John's best homie, clean that, go pick up the right plumbing part that John asked you to get, text him a picture because you don't want to make no mistakes with John, because you make 3 mistakes with John going to Home Depot and Lowe's and picking up the wrong parts. He's going to think that this guy's dumb, right? So, so these people need to be your best ally. Yes, because you're paying them good money, but also they need to be doing these Jedi tricks because that means a lot to a busy guy like John, and most certainly Get Cracked for me.
Master Kim, years ago, I used to own an apartment building, and at the corner of the apartment building was a Korean-owned like grocer or something like that. And I remember talking to the guy, and he told me that they have like a Korean business group or something like that, where these guys may team up and buy 10,000 sodas, Coca-Colas or whatever between them. And, they're getting pricing levels that mom and pop just aren't able to get, that cohesion where they're teaming up for deliveries and things like that. So it's just very interesting to hear you speak about these things. Let me ask you another question. Why don't you tell us about? I kind of want to get into the difference between the immigrants and the like the Americans, and what you think hinders the Americans from being successful. So I'll tee it up, and you can just talk on that.
Yep, and thank you, John. And this kind of gets back to our previous conversations that the average American have a lot of other options, and they speak English excellently, right? A lot of them do have higher level educations and other opportunities. To a lot of immigrants, new immigrants, first generation, and even some second generations, they, in their head, they may not be very successful at trying to get on board with EDS or GM or some of these big suppliers, whether it be in management or labor. A lot of it is because their English isn't perfected yet. Their comprehension of written English and speaking English, and although they can probably master it over time, common language, right? So maybe they feel, and to a degree it's very true, that they can't support because they're also taking care of their family. They're also probably taking care of their in-laws. So I think the success rate is much higher of them being in a small business where they don't even need to understand what people do with Marlboro or Newport Lights or Mountain Dew.
Mm.
They don't even need to say Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew says who they are, right? So they don't even have to speak the language. The Mountain Dew and Newport sell themselves. So the average American has many other options, and I think that to deal with American culture at the I guess the unskilled labor end, right? You have to endure a certain level of being mistreated, which the average American, in the back of their mind, and what the founding fathers have said, hey, we're all created equal. I'm not going to be mistreated. In fact, Martin Luther King had spoken on my behalf, and this is unacceptable level of behavior. Whereas the Asians and other cultures, we come in and we don't assume that we're entitled to a certain level of dignity and respect. We're just wanting to support our families, and because we're looking at the big macro picture, we gloss over of the racism and the disrespect and all the other things that people would look as barriers and inconveniences. We have to tune that shit out, because otherwise we're going to be out on the street. And because I cannot go work for Coca-Cola, I don't have their experience and credentials to go work for corporate Coca-Cola. So for the many parts, this is the only opportunity, is for them to do self-help. And on top of that, a lot of these cultures do come from poor, corrupt countries where the police are paid off, the politicians are paid off. So therefore, these people come to this country and they are handsomely poor. They don't get on food stamps. They don't trust any taken money of the government. And I told you what happened when I was in kindergarten, living at that apartment that you showed up. My
Mhm.
mother beat my ass because the school had put a winter coat. They took me to this room, just like a stack of winter coats and boots, and they put winter coats and boots on my brother and I in Detroit, Michigan. When I went home that night, my mother beat my brother and our ass. I'm going to say maybe a couple days in a row. She was that humiliated that we accepted free shit from the school. I mean, she whooped us to drill in our brain. Don't be taking shit. Not anything anti-American, but she was unwilling to accept that she was just a waitress. We were living poor, and she was struggling to make ends meet. She wouldn't accept help from anyone. And because, again, in the Asian, level of thinking, we can't show that weak side, despite it was obvious we were weak. It was obvious we were poor. She refused in her brain for us to show that side to anyone. As weird as that sounds.
Hey, get crack. Would you say it's the same in the Vietnamese culture as well? Like, was your mother that way?
Um, you know, it's because we're Southeast Asians. I think like yeah, that we're not gonna be that hardcore about the save face, like not to show poverty, right? Um, but my mom was like more like that. Like she did not like to take welfare. She did not like to, yeah, but you know, my relatives, whatever, just get money from the government, this and that. So yeah, that's why like my family's like my mom's kind of really not in some ways good terms with the rest of my family. Okay, so in that sense, yeah, she's very different.
She's very different from the rest of your
Yeah,
family.
yeah, because the rest of my family just want to just make a nail salon, just get welfare, just work the system, you know. And my mom's like all academically minded, like I said before, and it's probably because like she's a half sibling of the rest of my family. So her mom died early, and the thing is, so my grandfather was basically a big businessman, very successful, like import export to the French.
Here in America or in Vietnam?
No, in Vietnam, to the French and whoever, you know, and he was very wealthy. And I think, yeah, she just looks at the rest of my family like kind of like disappointments. Like, yeah.
You know, Master Kim, and Get Crack, you being a resident Asians here, you probably heard about the Asian crime, Asian hate. Have you heard about that? I'm sure you have, Get Crack.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, keep in mind, it is just that it's in the news, but historically, in the Bronx and in New York, they've been stealing from Asians from the jump. You know, like bum. You know, that's but it's in the news more. Is as far as I'm going to use the term recreational violence. They're beasting on Asians just because they're bored and they're having fun doing it. So this is the newer dynamic. They're not just beasting on Asians for robbery and opportunities. They're doing it and they're not even taking nothing. They're just, you know, and elderly Asians too. They're never picking on, you know, the younger Asian guys at all, you know, but yes, absolutely aware of it.
Let me show you this video, Master Kim and Get Crack in the audience here. This is an Asian woman in the store.
I had nothing of yours.
This was taking so long.
Okay. I had nothing here.
Police there now? Police out there?
The police here, huh?
She should have been there. Oh, she had all time.
Okay. Son, wait. Am I playing with him? This is our police. Please.
Maybe she wouldn't do wrong from the police.
Hey, old man.
They outside.
I'm going to pause it for 1 second. You know, when you told me, when you told the story about the people coming in robbing your store and you were sitting there and customers were still coming in?
Yes.
This is like eerily similar. There's someone filming this, presumably.
Yes.
No one is helping this man. People are letting this woman just struggle with this man for things that don't belong to her. Is this normal in the, like, this has to be normal in this industry, would you say?
I would say yes in the hood areas, because also, you know, there's a price to pay for being a good Samaritan in the hood, right? So people, just like a domestic violence, same thing. Dudes beating their ass out of their wife in the middle of like in the broad daylight, right? People just don't, you know. So I don't think it has to do with the prejudice towards the Asian store owner, and it might, but just that's a very small part. I think it's just the rule of the hood, man. You just keep it moving, right? Because that energy could be turned towards you, versus in the suburbs. Guys like the Savage Red, I'm using him like they step in immediately and help wrestle the fool to the ground.
You think a Savage Red would have stopped her?
Oh, absolutely. And mind you, and again, this isn't to diminish the guys like Savage Red. Guys like Savage Red are dime a dozen all over the place. Good, hardworking white boys and black people too, by the way. But in the suburbs, the white and black people would have intervened right out the gate, because there's no price to pay for being a good guy.
Yeah, this is really amazing. I'll start back up here.
Oh man.
Get off my pay.
Look how many people in this store. Men walking in. This is truly amazing. Like, I understand when you're saying that the average American just would not be willing to do this. This is truly amazing. There are people outside. You see all these people outside?
Let us go.
John,
Huh?
keep in mind one thing that a lot of people do know with these local stores, a lot of the males, a lot of the men that might have warrants, they're not driving. So they're walking back and forth to these local stores. They don't, or maybe they're on probation. They don't want their name on any paper at all, even as a witness to anything. So many times these guys might see something, but they don't want to get involved because they have their own personal reasons too. Now, that's not to say everyone, but some of these stores that are thick in the hood, there's a rule in the hood. Don't go a mile radius away from your home because nothing good ever happens, especially if if you've got warrants out or things like that, unpaid child support. So a lot of people have got paper on them that they want their name again mentioned.
Master Kim, there's not even a voice of disapproval here.
Correct.
Like, what do you think about that? Like, in an Asian community or any community, if this is going on for over a minute, and now one person said, sweetie, don't steal in this store. Nothing. And go ahead.
And the advocates of that store, because some of the older people, they're probably too intimidated to get involved too. But they do have allies that come up there every day, maybe every once in a while, will help take the garbage out for the guy for some quick money and some beer. Even those people are kind of polarized because they don't know what to do because they're weak too. But you're right. Why isn't a level-headed I believe the strong personality types have vacated these neighborhoods. So what you have left are what we see, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm gonna play the last couple seconds of the video. Then there are some people in the audience that have submitted questions, Master Kim, and they may have some for you, Get Cracked. And again, I think you're a valuable resource, and you're here giving your time and information free. So if they have questions, I want them to be able to ask them. We have time. So we have probably another 13, 14 minutes, 15 minutes or so. So let me finish this. And I know Garen had a question. Some other people may have questions. So we'll open it up for them.
She stole a lot. Imagine that. Police is coming now. This stuff don't belong to you.
Truly amazing. Let's go to some questions here. Let me bring the people up on the panel, and then I'll go through some of the questions in the comments. All right, anyone have any questions for Master Kim? If you do, you can put them in the comments, or you can, if you can join the panel if you like. I'll put the link in the panel. I know there's some questions. Garen, you had a question, I think. Did Garen step up? Angela, Ice Cube, you have questions?
Not right now.
Ice Cube, any questions for Gary, for Master Kim?
Hey, how's everyone going? I know.
Good morning, Ice Cube.
Yeah, there's the question on the that EAE question. That's kind of what my question was. Hey, good morning, Angel.
Master Kim, any thoughts on this question here? Get cracked.
Well, I mean, Master Kim pretty much alluded to it. He didn't say it in the term, like people would know it as face saving, and Asians, they wanna be face saving at all times. So they don't want to look weak. They don't want, exactly like Master Kim said. So if the self-deletion rates are very high, then obviously if they go through hard times and they can't get out of it, they rather just do seppuku and that's just, instead of that's just it.
That must put a lot of pressure on the Asians to
succeed.
Oh
yeah, and that's why I told you before, Asians gotta work, work smarter. Look at me. I rejected going to MIT, Berkeley, UCLA, like Caltech or Georgia Tech. I didn't even bother applying to those places because I knew I would just get stomped on. What's the point? I rather like conserve my energy and stay in my lane and have a better end result rather than burning myself out competing in academia just to get a 4.0 to get the first good job. I don't need to do that to get the first good job and have a good career. And I think Asians like that's a weakness too. Having too much of that face saving can be a weakness. And blacks have the opposite effect, right? They have no face save. They don't give a shit about how their race looks when they do something wrong.
Yeah, I will
You
agree.
see?
No black is gonna kill himself because he didn't live up to his
Exactly.
family
So there should be like, a balance in things, and you can't go one extreme or another extreme. And it's just like, come on. It's just
Hey,
ridiculous.
John.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead,
John,
Mr.
do you remember how, and I don't think Get Cracked for Me was on the panel at all, but I said that you would never hear Get Cracked for Me even coded language hint at racism, or this bank isn't loaning to Asians, or they're racist, or I kind of joked a couple times. I said you would never ever hear me say that to Get Cracked. And likewise, he would never share his weakness. I would never share my weakness. For this, like I said, if I mentioned anything like that, he would just probably dismiss my contact information. He would just want. So the reason I'm trying to say that, it kind of hints as my earlier comment of saving face and showing the positive, strong side. Anything negative, these Asians really don't want to throw out there like that because they know that we're judged on it, right? So, and I'm using that 3 acres near the airport. Get Cracked for Me is high intellect. He's going to remember in 2024 when I was using profanity about having to pay for my daughter's piano lessons and where am I going to get the money, right? These guys are smart. So I'm going to cleverly conceal my frustration. So with that being said, if Asian men are deleting themselves, I think because they don't go around whining about, they've had a bad day or they got fired, they internalize it all. And, obviously don't seek help when there is help out there. But with that being said, I'm seeing a very broad comment as well.
Someone,
yeah.
Darren asked a question. He said, "A woman robbed your mom?"
I would say
Yeah.
no. It was so with the wig shops, it would be women and men, like as a crew. But when it got into the liquor store business, 100% men. Or the gas station grocery store business. So robbery is an inherent part of the business. And the way we chalk it up is, 365 days of the year, we haven't been robbed in 3 years. That's excellent odd. And we just keep it moving. We just don't even, there have been Patels that I've done business with that I stopped at their store and their clerk was killed. And in the gas station world, if you're a Chevron or Sunoco or Exxon, those corporate companies catch wind of these armed robberies. And you got corporate Exxon Shell from Texas calling your store to wish is everything okay? And it's stunning the way the Patels will chalk it up as the guy was a worker. Well, I thought the guy was like a brother-in-law. Like, what? They said, no, he's a worker. They don't want to talk about it. They want to keep it moving. And I get it. Because if they
you told a story like that when they robbed the store and beat up your mother. Did the next day you opened and you told the people that you shot at them or something to that effect? You want to tell that story?
So if you read that news article I emailed you where I lied to the reporters and said that my mother busted rounds back, which was not true. It was a lie. So obviously, anytime you're bullied or robbed or taken advantage of, you're a mark. You're considered weak. That how could someone on Friday night, in the restaurant industry, grocery store industry, liquor store industry, Friday night is showtime, right? All week you build up your inventory, you check your labor to make sure that Friday, Saturday night, that's showtime because the volume is almost double of a weekday, right? So Friday at 11:30 at night, it's a big check cashing night. The store was loaded up, and 2 African American gentlemen in ski mask, walked in the store, held out their pistols. I was not there. My mother and stepfather were there, and maybe one employee. And on Friday nights, we have a Tampa box. Have a Tampa cigar box is perfect because it's the exact same size as physical cash. So if
Hmm.
you a yellow Have a Tampa box, you open it, you realize that a stack of 50s or hundreds or whatever it is fits handsomely in it, and you can fit 2 rows of currency in it. So Have a Tampa boxes work out great, but you could also fit a Smith and Wesson 38 and a Have a Tampa box. So next to the register, we would have 2 Have a Tampa boxes, one with physical cash for check cashing, because when you cash checks, you can't be tooling around and checking the safe and all that. You have to
Hmm.
be able to cleanly pull out money and cash people's checks. So Friday night, we're loaded with physical cash in the register, next to the register, and we got cash in the safe, and the safe is on a timer. Most of the people know a liquor store or a convenience store have what's called a TAC 2. That's a 10-minute timer. You cannot open it on the spot. You have to wait 10 minutes, right? So when the guys announced an armed robbery, they locked the store door because you can turn the deadbolt inside and lock it. So people are standing outside the store watching what's going on, and I don't think anyone was in the store. And the guys are holding up weapons, shooting the weapons vertical. Is it no
In the
side
air
to
or in the
side?
field.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
side. In the air, but also vertically. So one bullet went through tons of equipment and just
Mm.
destroying the place. One bullet just fucks up everything. So they're asking where the money is, and it was almost identical to the movie Menace to Society, like with Old Dog, because when they're also pistol whipping my mother and stepfather, who was Korean. Where open up the safe, where's the money? And while they're grabbing, and as they're strong arming my mother, they themselves with one of the other guys was opening up the cash register, grabbing money, and stuff is grabbing lottery tickets, everything. The cash box got dumped over, but so did our Smith and Wesson get dumped over. So all this cash had been dumped over that they I don't think paid attention to or grabbed it, but the weapon they didn't see the 38 bounce onto the floor. So they're beating my mother for more money to open up the safe, and my mother turned the key and pressed the door button, which means that's when the timer started. But there's a red light, and they're whooping my mother, and my mother said, "It's a timer. Can't you see the red light?" The guy couldn't see the red light because he had pantyhose and a ski mask. So he lifts his ski mask up so he could visibly see better to see the red light my mother was talking about. Then it became Menace to Society. Where's the videotape at? He's beat my mom's ass because now he wants the videotape. We've got the videotape locked away in the back room. But behind the counter, and this is what good crack for me is going to love, Asians watch these videotapes of TV shows back in their country. And it might be out of date by a month or two. They feverishly watch DVDs and videos from programs back, from Korea or whatnot. And a get cracked for me would be Vietnam. So my mother sits behind the counter watching these videotapes. So they eject the videotape. Out comes a Korean videotape written in Korean text. So the guy says, "Yeah, I got it. He thinks he's got the VHS tape, right?" So they grab the VHS tape. Mind you, they come in with no bags, no nothing. They're grabbing bottles of Hennessy. They're grabbing bottles of shit, and it's falling to the ground, by the way, because how many fifths of liquor, Hennessy bottles are fat at the bottom, right? So you can't
Yeah.
even grab. There's only so many you can grab because they don't handsomely stack together, right? Like Martell and Hennessy, they just, unlike a whiskey bottle, you could probably grab 6 and hold it like a baby, right? So they're grabbing liquor, it's crashing to the ground, and as they're slamming my mother to the ground and my father, they're being slammed on the broken glass. So it's like not only are they getting beat, but they're being stomped on the broken glass, shards of glass.
Yeah.
So at some point, they're done because now all these people are showing up at watching the door because they're coming in Friday night to buy shit. So the robbers leave the store. I get a call from my mother because I had the key to the VCR. The surveillance VCR, you cannot just eject the key. So I come up there. I'm just stunned that all this happened. And also I'm thinking, man, if I was there, I'd probably be gunned down, because maybe I look more fit or maybe I would have done a jack move and would have been shot in the process. So I get the keys, give it to the sheriff department, the VCR, all that stuff. and then my mother and my stepfather are whisked away to the hospital, all this stuff. So now I'm there, giving details to the news and shit like that. And it happened in 2000 in Oakland County, Michigan. So Oakland County Sheriff Department, Oakland County Press it was in, and I emailed a copy of the article where I told the Free Press that my mother had fired the 38, which was a
Did we lose Mexican? Oh, he's back.
An elderly Korean lady had exchanged rounds with thugs that were robbing us. So it actually escalated and made us seem much more tough. They never found these guys. The dog and the canine unit, they never found them and all that other stuff. But with all that being said, that's probably the most bloodiest, is because, we've had robberies before where they've shot up at the ceiling, but this is the first robbery that they've kind of shot behind, like they shot at my mother, but over her head. But that one bullet would just fuck up our hot dog roller, our coffee. We're talking, I hate to sound so petty. Thank God they didn't shoot my mother, but
yeah.
But it was. Then I had a customer come up there, truck driver, give me a PK 9mm gun, unregistered gun, and because after armed robbery, the sheriff department, they come and they confiscate all your weapons because for whatever reason they took our weapons too. So we had no pistol there at all. So a truck driver, a white boy truck driver, came and just gave us a gun, asked no questions. No,
really?
He sold it to me for $200. I'm sorry, sold
really?
it to me for $200, and I kept it in the safe. We had another armed robbery, so that gun was taken because again, when the cops show up, they want all the weapons, right? So the gun that was given to me unregistered in Michigan, it's not like Georgia and these southern states. There it is right there. Mm-hmm. Yep. And if you could conceal my name, I don't know if it mentions my name. If you could conceal my name, but yeah, that right there.
Yeah. And then, I won't show it, Mr. Kim, but I just show the headline here.
Yeah. So everyone thought that my mother had busted rounds, and it was unsure because there was so much blood. Because remember, I said my mother and stepfather were hurt very bad because of the broken glass. They weren't sure whether my mother had shot them because there was so much blood. Because when you stand up bleeding, you're bleeding everywhere. So even as you get up to stand up, you're bleeding everywhere, on the counter, on the lottery tickets. They weren't, and then times that by two people, their legs were bleeding, their neck was bleeding, my mom's ear was bleeding because they were slamming her, picking her up again. They were ragdolling her. They were ragdolling my mom because my mom could speak English, my stepfather couldn't. So they were ragdolling my mom, and every time they ragged her down to the floor, she'd be messed up by the glass again. So the reason I say that is we've had numerous robberies, but that does not change. You would think, okay, so to an American, they would look at this and say, fuck it, I'm done. This isn't worth it. I'm closed. They wouldn't even sell the store. They would close it, right? We didn't.
Yeah.
I opened up at 6 a.m. As soon as the sheriff department were done fingerprinting and doing all their stuff, I opened up immediately, and it wasn't that I was callous. It was, I had to keep it. We had to keep it moving.
You had to show back up. You had to show back up, or the criminals were coming back.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, so and then this was one of many, but so this is the stuff that Americans won't deal with, and this is stuff that Asians, once they get to a certain level, they want to deal with this type of stuff. Like I had to deal with it because I'm second generation. I had no choice in the matter, and one thing I will say about Asians, man, my mother paid for everything. My college tuition, my Jeep Renegade that was lifted. I lived at her house. So, but in the Asian community, you'll go from zero to hero or hero to zero in seconds. So I was fired 10 times and I was hired 10 times by my mother. So make no mistake about it, there's a price to pay when you're all in. When you're all in, hey, give me back, get punched in the face by your own elderly Korean mother and give me back my truck. I'm like thinking, okay, it's got a 3-inch lift and big fat boy hillbilly tires. Good luck, Kim. you know.
Yeah.
So, but that's the Asian culture, by the way, at least low end Asian culture.
Master
What's
Kim,
up, Angel?
we have so much I want to talk to you about. We probably could go on for hours and hours. Let's end it here because next time I want to pick up on some of the advantages you say your mother had. Well, you talked about the gay, and you talked about the disadvantages that you had relative to her. I mean, we can go on and on forever, but let's end here, and I want to give you an opportunity to give people in the panel some advice on what you would tell a younger person. Many people in the panel are much younger than you and I. So if you want to give them some advice, feel free. Take your time, Mexican.
Oh yeah, well, one thing. Hopefully, the next show or whenever we do have time, I'd like to go over the economics of the gross profit, the margins, how much these stations make,
Yeah.
so that they can kind of do the math in their head. And I can also kind of mention to them certain ways to get into the business of owning gas station, liquor stores, you buy, we fry, beauty salons, and all that stuff. And you don't necessarily. It helps to be part of the gay, but it isn't. It isn't necessary. There's plenty other ways of entry, and I'd like to share some of those ways to do that. And with all that being said, the businesses that it doesn't matter if you lose your job, you're still going to stop by and buy your 6-pack of beer, or if you get a raise on your job. They're the industries that are recession proof. These are the industries that I think a lot of Americans, white and black, need to get involved in. Because also keep in mind, who's going to do better? Ching Chong, the Kim family, which is us, right? That we didn't watch the SEC football championship game. We don't go to the local football teams to support the little league teams. Who would do better? An American would do better because they share the exact same culture and are just more likable. And this isn't to diminish myself and other Asians. So this is stunning why people here that are from the culture don't get into these businesses, because they would thrive. And I know the reasons why, and we've talked about some of the reasons. But that's it. And thank you very much, John, for bringing myself up, as well as Get Cracked for me. And again, we all aspire to become what you're into.
Someone need to go on mute there.
Hey, Master Ken, could I ask you a question? Or John, could I ask a question?
Yeah, sure, go right ahead.
Hey,
hold
Master Ken.
on. We're not ending the stream. We're just gonna change direction. I have a couple of topics I wanted to cover, so that's what we'll do after this. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Stream's still going. Hey, Master Kim, you asked or John asked a question earlier about you guys sacrificing and living in a lower economic community, and then you versus like moving out to a more affluent area. Would you say it was worth it to sacrifice for all those years, or would you say, you said it was like a whole nother world going to the suburbs? What would you recommend? Like, hindsight being 2020 and everything.
Yep, I want to say it was not worth it. I wouldn't want to wish it on my worst enemy, because the talents that you get from living in the hood, of fighting like a pit bull and thinking like a pit bull, they harm you in your adult life, because you acting like a beast is great when you're around a bunch of other fatherless boys, but in the real world, acting like a pit bull, you'll catch a case, you're done. You can't get a liquor license in your name. So I'm going to say, yes, my mother was able to save money, but there's a night and day difference. I would have much rather lived with some meth cooking hillbilly ass people in a trailer park than in the hood. There's a night and day difference, in my opinion.
Any other questions, guys?
Got it. Appreciate it. Angel, you got a question?
Nah. I mean, I'm just like one.
So you're just up here to call it, because you just up here to say the ER, huh?
No, but actually, Master Kim, the fact that you had to lie to was it the news station or the police?
Very good question. Angel, so doggone smart. To the news, not the police. To the news.
And I'd say you did actually do a great job, because let's just be honest, if you actually told the truth in terms of the details, how the media works. They'll spin a narrative any which way they can, even if it's a local news station. Even though I was on the news once in late July of 2019, when a car did a hit and run on me when I was riding my bike to the nearest Walmart before I moved here to Arizona almost 5 years ago. But I like to understand in a situation like that they would make you out as the bad guy. Because let's just be honest, if you defend yourself, it's like that's a criminal act nowadays. Look at the NYC bodega, the person that I talked about yesterday from a few years ago, where he almost got robbed, and the worker at the bodega had took his knife out and stabbed the robber and killed him in self-defense, and they tried to charge him, but those charges of murder were like thankfully dropped because of his self-defense. But the media will spin any type of narrative that makes it as though you are a good person, as though it's a bad thing.
Yes,
Hey,
absolutely.
oh, my.
Do we have any other questions before we end this stream?
Real quick, I had a clarification or a follow-up for Master Kim pertaining to someone. I don't hate to do it, but Master Kim, do you think there's any value though in living, in a lower economic area? Do you think there's some value in like building some catalyst or something? Like let's say someone like Angel. I don't know. We don't really know him, but do you think he would benefit from living in a lower economic area, maybe for a season or two? What do you think?
So I would say there could be, but it gets trumped by the raw violence. Raw violence, wherever you go on this planet, is the ace card that trumps quality of life, right? So if the violence, the being, if violence and crime weren't so off the hook, could you live in kind of a border area, where there's white trash in the hood? Yeah, absolutely. Because also keep in mind, some of the toughest fighters and the white boys I don't want to mess with are guys just like Savage Red, the guys that there's a bunch of white boys that they see. A lot of the black community know how to punk out white guys like no one's business, because they could be like, what'd you say? Because they know you start barking at a white guy, their brains freeze up. Guys like Savage that have lived in the hood, close to the hood, they don't take the bait. And they look at you, they square up, So I would say yes. One of the advantages of living in those areas is it teaches you to be very manly. It does teach you how to act amongst men. And in the planet, whether it be the military, anywhere you go, you're going to have to be amongst men, and it teaches you how to act, right? And to be able to be picked on and dish it back, and not that I need to look at the worst of some traits. But John, do you mind if I mention one more quick story, and I'll make it quick? And
the floor is yours, Master Kim. Go right ahead.
So over in Grand River, there was a Korean guy that owned a whole block of buildings from Wig. I mean, he was the landlord. He didn't own the individual businesses, but he owned, it was like almost like a mall or something like that. So he was part of the gay group, right? And there could be several gays that you're involved in. And the gay is just like the Susu group. That one person can be involved in like 4 other groups. So my mother had led this one group, and she's the one that I did say that occasionally we all meet at the restaurant, but occasionally the guy's working or he's out of town, he can't show up. So therefore he has to show up in person and give that money to the group leader, right? So, and at this point in time, it was my mother, and he had an armed robbery the day, though he had an armed robbery that day. At his shop, he has 2 briefcases, a briefcase filled with newspapers and a briefcase filled with money, or just, it sounds like a movie, I guess. It just sounds so stupid, by the way. And if he's ever robbed, he would give the fake briefcase to whoever's wanting to rob him. So in one situation, the robbers came in and they wanted both briefcases. They took both briefcases, but then after they got the briefcases from him, they shot at him. One of the bullets went through his hand, to the point where his hand was damaged, but maybe it didn't. I don't know if there's vital arteries in the hand or whatnot, but it's to the point where he didn't go directly to the hospital. So he drives to our house 2:00 in the morning to tell my mother why he couldn't give her the money. And he held up his bandaged hand that was just the gauze and blood everywhere. Or maybe he had just checked out of the hospital. He came over immediately, either before going to the hospital or being discharged from the hospital to show my mother that he had been shot at, right? And he was robbed. And this was a wealthy man. But the reason that it was important for him to show up was to show my mother that the reason he didn't have the money. And it was stunning because normal human beings would have said, F you and your money and your group. I'm done with this. Sue me, right? But he knew that if he was excluded from this group in the future, that would hurt his business cash flow in the future. So I say all this is just using a very absolutely belligerent example that I've never seen before. And I'm just picking the incident that just highlights the largest for me.
I actually have another question for Master Kim, right quick. Your story that you told where you had to lie to the media about how you were robbed, if I'm not mistaken. What would you think would happen, or how they would spin it if you told the truth about that event in your life, what happened in terms of your self-defense? How would you think they would perpetuate and spin it if you told everything accordingly to what happened?
Okay, so and very good question. Now, the only thing I lied about is that my mother exchanged gunfire, and I did say I believe. So I did use some savvy words like I believe, and then they see the blood everywhere. They obviously saw the bullet holes through all the equipment, so they knew something had taken place. And then obviously, even when they asked the police said, we're not sure, we're investigating. But to answer your question is, when it comes to these violent crimes, the media doesn't really pounce on it because it's not sexy. This just isn't interesting stuff. Asians getting robbed and violent. It just isn't interesting stuff. We're store owners. This is society knows that this is just part and parcel of the businesses that we're in. So to be honest with you, there's no, and I'm not trying to say boo-hoo me at all. I'm just saying that it's not sexy stuff. It isn't interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Asian store owners being robbed. It doesn't garner the attention. Now,
let me ask you this question, Mr. Kim, because we have about 8 minutes. I'm going to start up another stream. Do you think that race plays a part in that? Like that the people that are robbing your store are black?
I would say with the excess of beat my mom's ass and my stepfather throwing him on, I think that maybe had something. They overdid it. Now, am I glad that they didn't shoot my mom directly? Yes.
No, what I'm saying is, do you think that the reason why the media is not interested in these stories is
correct.
because the perpetrators are black?
Yeah, I believe so. Now, if we were some country white people or black people, I think that they would continue round two. What's happened, But because we're Asian, I just don't think it's interesting. People aren't really. They're just, maybe they can't identify with us, or maybe we're too gook looking, Which, I think someone said it the other day on the stream. I think it was Imperius who said, hey, they got slanty eyes and look different, or what. I was like, oh, it's kind of true. I don't know what to say about that. It's true,
Can't change that.
I mean, I'm not gonna agree. And the reason I say belligerent comments like that is really no reason at all, just to be humorous, I suppose.
What the heck is going on here?
Another Asian restaurant.
Oh my god!
Mr. Kim, I see why. These are men here. I see why, this would be very difficult for Americans to do when they could easily go do something else. It's one of the things I've thought that has really hindered Americans is that, only a foreigner is going to put up with this kind of thing. Only a foreigner.
I actually have to agree with what John was asking you, Master Kim, is I think the reason why obviously the media wasn't interested is because it didn't have anything to do with the black person. Because let's be honest, if it was a black person, the media would, of course, take it and then spin it in any which way they could against you, just because of self-defense. And yet the whole thing, as I said, of the bodega, the robber was black, the store owner, I think, was Hispanic or Mexican or something. I know he wasn't white in terms of his ethnicity or race there. And just from what I read a few years ago when I first heard about it, I just think the reason why some stories become attention based is because of a particular kind of race that the media wants to run with.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's end it here. We have I have another stream coming up. I'll go ahead and just start it right now. You can jump over to that one. This has been a very good with Master Kim. We're going to do this as much as time permits him to do it. Any morning he's available. I think this is the best topic to talk about for this channel. All right. Hey, thank you again, Master Kim. Thank you, Get Crack, Angel, everyone in the panel, everyone on the chat.
I'll see you on your new stream in a moment, John. I'll see you over there.
Hold on, we have another question. Cube, you have a question? Did you have
no question. I was just saying peace out to everyone. I'll see you guys on the next stream.
Join us on the other stream there. Some interesting things I want to talk about here. Thank you again.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Yep. See you on the stream.
Thank you, Master Kim. Thank you, Get Craig, everyone.
See you guys.